In episode 146 for November 9th, 2020, my conversation with Kelly Finnerty, Director of Brand and Content for StartPage.com, on the differences in privacy mindset between Europe and the United States. As I talk about almost every week on this show, the threat of cyber attacks looking to compromise your private information is unfortunately on the rise during this pandemic. So it's a great time to think about how to better protect your smartphone, laptop, and key fob for your car with a Silent Pocket Faraday sleeve. A Faraday sleeve blocks all wireless signal, making your devices untrackable, unhackable, and undetectable. Check out Silent Pocket's full line of Faraday products at silentpocket.com, and don't forget to use discount code SHAREDSECURITY to receive 10% off your order at checkout.
Is your team starting to show signs of fatigue from traditional security awareness compliance training, or from phishing assessments that target them for those teachable moments? As we've seen in recent news, these kinds of training are having a negative impact on corporate culture, and they're really not all that effective. So there has to be a better way. ClickArmor is the first gamified learning platform that helps build a self-defending team through engaging learning challenges and exercises. Its unique lesson templates, built with proven gamification techniques, let people learn and exercise important defensive concepts in a safe and fun environment. Whether you need to quickly deploy a training solution that gets people to stop clicking on things immediately, or you've got your own boring content that needs to be put into a more interesting user experience, ClickArmor can help. So go to clickarmor.ca/sharedsecurity to learn how to build a self-defending team.
Joining me on the show this week is Kelly Finnerty, Director of Brand and Content for StartPage.com, the world's most private search engine. Welcome to the show, Kelly.
Hi, Tom. Thanks for having me.
Great to have you. So this week we're talking about a very interesting topic, which is the differences in privacy mindset between Europe and the United States. But before we get into that discussion, Kelly, can you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and your role at StartPage?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm the Director of Brand and Content for StartPage, the world's most private search engine. And while we are a lean international team, we wear many different hats. I personally, my main focus is to raise awareness of people's worldwide right to privacy and inform them that there are privacy-minded products out there that don't collect or sell their personal data for profit and truly respect their privacy. And so that consists of, running our blog, Privacy Please, doing interviews with people like yourself, just raising conversations and knowledge around the space, as well as working with our team to have fun and interesting conversations about privacy on social.
That's awesome. And we did talk to your colleague, Alex, a few weeks ago, talking about StartPage. So for our listeners that want to learn more about StartPage and what you guys do, we'll in our show notes, we'll have a link to that episode. I definitely recommend checking it out because you guys are doing great things over at StartPage.
Thanks.
So in general, what is the difference between the US and European mindset when we talk about online privacy?
Well, I can't claim to be the expert between Europe and American mindset of privacy, but I do have an interesting perspective, having lived and worked in Europe, in the UK, for almost 4 years, and then being born and raised here in the United States. From a personal perspective, I do feel that Americans are a lot more inclined to share on social media, live their brand, their personal brand, and perhaps overshare is something that has just been an American cultural difference. Additionally, I feel that big tech was founded here in Silicon Valley, and the products and the types of data mining practices really did begin here. And people are so interested in what's new that they might not be looking at the privacy policy behind that new product or feature and thinking about the implications of their privacy. So just the fact that big tech really boomed and started in the United States, I think has definitely impacted the way that people think about it. Whereas Europeans are a little bit more aware of, what is that new American big tech product or a product from anywhere really, to really consider what is the origin of that product from, and maybe do some due diligence looking into and reading a privacy policy or reading what other experts are saying about that product. And then lastly, the way that people are demanding privacy protection from their governments. You've seen a lot more strong privacy legislation come out from Europe versus the United States, which is beginning to start the conversation, but isn't where Europe is with GDPR.
Now, do you think that's really kind of a historical thing too? Like the historical differences between Europe and the United States? Do you think that's impacted privacy?
Most definitely. And just like most things, for it to really impact people in a strong way, it starts from probably from years in the past. And Europe has a long history of privacy invasions. World War II being the greatest example I can think of, where the Nazi regime used highly sensitive personal information collected from local registrars to identify, locate, and round up the Jewish population. One of the worst cases of government surveillance, of people surveillance, and using personal data to hurt our world. Additionally, later on in communist and East Germany communism, you saw the secret police agency Stasi, where if spying was normalized and that mass surveillance was normalized. So Germany specifically and Europe at large has seen the very worst experience of mass surveillance and data collection. So I think that that historical knowledge of it makes them much more aware, and makes them much more cautious when accepting a new product feature, to really consider who is behind it and what are their practices.
Yeah, I find it interesting. I know you said you've spent some time in the UK. I think I saw a stat somewhere saying that London specifically is the most surveilled city in the world in terms of surveillance cameras. And I find that kind of maybe ironic or funny that, Europeans have such a huge stance on privacy, yet we still see surveillance and other things being kind of, all over the place in Europe.
CCTV is expansive throughout. I lived in London, and there was actually conversations about, where are areas that CCTV cameras aren't hitting, and it was few and far in between. And I think that it is up to people to keep an eye on. I know AI is a growing heated topic in the privacy world, and really I think it's up to the people to decide what we feel comfortable with and what we don't. A lot of times people feel more comfortable if it's the government watching, but you have to always question, because government policies, people, approaches change over time. So if it's not regulated, if it's not unchecked power, it can really go in the wrong direction.
Yeah, definitely. So how are expectations of people's privacy today different comparing the US to Europe?
Yeah. So from a personal perspective, what I've noticed, people in the United States feel like their privacy or their personal data is almost the price they have to pay to access the internet. A lot of times that comes from, one, just being excited about what that has to offer, information, entertainment, so accessible to you that people are almost feeling like they should pay something of theirs to access that. We always say, if you're not paying anything, you yourself are the product. And that has almost become the norm for people to expect that. And then the other aspect is that was made very clear around the Snowden revelations where Snowden brought awareness that the government was collecting personal data at such a high level and infringing upon our own citizen privacy rights. And, Snowden now lives in Russia because the US population didn't stand up for him and say that, thank you for making us aware of this. Rather, he was made to be a villain. And it was portrayed as the US was infringing upon people's privacy rights for protection. And so that expectation is, I'm willing to give away my privacy for government protection, but again, at what cost?
Right. And that has impacted, obviously, government laws and legislation on how people think of privacy. So like you said, things are rapidly changing with the privacy laws and regulations. We've seen GDPR, we've seen new legislation in California come out. That's kind of, I think we call it GDPR light over here. What's your thoughts on kind of the future and government laws and regulations when we're talking about Europe and the United States?
I always feel that any type of conversation around it, or any type of new legislation that's forcing conversation, is a good thing. I believe the group Future of Privacy Forum does an excellent job talking about the shortcomings of the new CCPA law. There's a lot of confusion within the law. There's a lot of loopholes. It's a tough law for it to be. It's starting in California, where is the home and backyard of all of big tech. So they have a lot of money invested in lobbyists writing this policy to make it loose potentially for ways for them to still collect the amount of data that they feel is necessary for their businesses. It really will take the people to stand up for it and to demand that CCPA is written in a clear way that's enforceable and that truly does protect people's privacy.
Yeah, what's your thoughts on big tech, kind of shaping both, I guess, the government's understanding and acceptance of, these privacy laws and personal data collection? Do you think it's like a conflict of interest?
Well, they are experts in the space, so hopefully they can draw upon their expertise, but definitely a conflict of interest, right? But they're a member they're a part of the problem. Hopefully they can be part of the solution, and most definitely upholding the solution, because they have to buy into it as well. So the reality is that data is power. It's information.
Yep.
And it's big bucks. It makes a lot of money. We just need to find the right ways to regulate it. And big tech is going to be a part of that conversation. It's up to people to regulate and government to regulate how much.
Right. And that kind of leads to, kind of the dangers or concerns to be aware of if people do not protect their right to privacy. What are some examples, I guess? We could talk about like COVID-19 tracing apps, right? As a good example.
Yeah. When it comes to the tracing apps, I feel very personally uncomfortable to create any type of account, albeit with Google or Apple, or even with my government, that tracks my whereabouts, my health condition. That to me makes me very uncomfortable and very nervous. Also, there's nothing currently proven that they're highly effective in showing if someone passes by somebody that they will actually now have COVID. Until I see something that's game changing in that space, I wouldn't ever even question it. It would be a no on all levels from me.
Yeah, and I think what we're finding and things that I've read and seen in the news is that, traditional contact tracing, the old fashioned way of just calling people and, doing that manually is actually more effective because it's a proven method, right? And people they don't feel that their privacy is invaded so much by a phone call or, that kind of that manual effort versus the technology. So it's very interesting.
Yeah. I would definitely prefer that. say if you went to an event or a location and, it was done manually like that, that would be more appealing.
So I know since, StartPage, you're a European-based company, do you feel that there are advantages that StartPage can provide users compared to, say, other privacy-minded companies like, we talk about DuckDuckGo all the time?
Yeah, I do. Well, interestingly too, just to build upon that comment, 56% of our typical daily searches come from Europe, with 36% of that coming from Germany. So that's a really good example to show, and our searchers come from all over the world. That's compared to only 21% on a typical day coming from the US. So even in that shows a pretty wide difference of a privacy mindset. People who are actively using a private search engine like StartPage, where 56% of that is coming from Europe compared to the 21% in the US. So to me, that's a pretty clear indication that Europe is much more ahead of America in terms of privacy awareness and also practicing privacy protection. Why Europeans, trust StartPage and have trusted StartPage for over 14 years. I myself is American, of course, but our headquarter office is in The Hague in the Netherlands. And then we also have teams in Germany, Austria. And our search itself is more protective from a European perspective than, say, a DuckDuckGo, because we have on-premise servers based in the Netherlands. And so when your first search goes through the StartPage anonymizing process, we actually remove your IP address, all personal data from your search at these on-premise servers in the Netherlands. And therefore, all users, no matter where you're based, are protected from European GDPR and so on, and Dutch privacy legislation, which is arguably the most stringent in the world. And a DuckDuckGo, being a US-based company using cloud-based servers, can offer that.
Makes a lot of sense. Well, Kelly, this has been great. Great topic. Love the conversation. Where can our listeners find out more about you and StartPage?
Excellent. So we have no idea who our users are. So we love to hear from them. Yeah, we love to hear from them either directly at privacyplease@startpage.com. That's an email address where you can reach our team directly. You can follow us on Twitter at StartPage on Twitter. You can follow us on Instagram at StartPageSearch. And also, I would really encourage anyone who's interested to learn more about privacy products outside of just search, interesting people who work in the privacy space, to go to our blog, Privacy Please. And you can find that at startpage.com. It's front and center, Privacy Please. It's a great resource and community of people that really care about privacy.
Excellent. Well, thanks again, Kelly, for coming on the show. Really appreciate it. And we'll maybe talk again soon.
I'd love that. Thanks, Tom.
That's a wrap for this week's show. Visit our website, sharedsecurity.net, for show notes, all previous episodes, and to sign up for our email newsletter. First-time listener of the show, please subscribe wherever you like to listen to podcasts. And if you like this episode, hit that like and subscribe button. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next week for another episode of the Shared Security Show.